My name is Kelm, and I am a senior correspondent for the Interstellar Broadcasting Collective. I have covered 47 Galactic Racing Championships. I have watched species from 17 star systems burn their engines out, trying to claim the Velorum Cup. I have never, not once, felt genuinely confused about what I was watching, until the humans showed up. Let me set the scene properly, because you deserve to understand just how absurd this whole situation was from the very beginning. The Galactic Racing Championship is the most prestigious competitive event in the known galaxy. Teams spend decades preparing. The Dracovian Syndicate alone poured 600 years of aeronautic engineering into their current racer, the Nullvex Prime. The Shorvani Collective, who have won 11 consecutive titles, brought their legendary pilot Zorathes, a creature whose reaction speed is medically documented at 0.003 seconds per input. And then there were the humans. They arrived at the Kelvora station docking bay in what I can only describe as a vehicle that appeared to have been assembled from components that did not originally know each other. Their ship, which they called the Dustbreaker, had panels of at least 3 different colors. One of the rear stabilizers was visibly held in place by a material their technician, a small, energetic woman named Brix Calloway, cheerfully identified as industrial adhesive, the heavy-duty kind. I stared at her for what felt like a long time. She smiled back and offered me a small wrapped snack from her pocket. The pre-race briefing was held in the Grand Pavilion of Kelvora Station, where the atmosphere alone costs more to maintain than most planetary defense budgets. All 14 competing teams sat in designated positions. The humans sat in theirs. Their lead pilot, a lean man with tired eyes named Oryn Vasek, was leaning back in his chair with his boots resting on the table in front of him. He was reading something on a flat rectangular device, completely unbothered by the fact that Zorathes was sitting 2 seats away and staring at him with 4 of her 6 eyes. Race director HFY, a being who has run this event for 3 centuries and has never once found anything funny about it, cleared his throat and addressed the room. The Velorum Course, he announced, consists of 42 sectors. Gravitational shear zones in sectors 9, 17, and 31. Debris fields in sectors 20 through 24. And the Korryn Tunnel, which, as always, will test your lateral precision to its absolute limit. He paused and looked at the humans specifically. The Korryn Tunnel has eliminated 23 competitors over its history. It is not forgiving. Oryn Vasek looked up from his reading device. How wide is it at the narrowest point? HFY blinked. 4.2 spans. Oryn nodded slowly, looked back down at his device, and said, "We'll be fine." The entire room went quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when everyone collectively decides not to say what they are thinking. Zorathes leaned toward her co-navigator and whispered something. Her co-navigator whispered back. Both of them looked at Oryn again, then looked at each other, then looked away. I pulled up everything the collective had on human racing history. Well, I found it not comfort me. Humans, apparently, have a motorsport culture that stretches back centuries on their home planet. They race on surfaces. They race in the sky. They race in water. They race in conditions that most species would classify as dangerous to the point of being medically irresponsible. Their entire sporting culture around vehicles appears to have been built on the philosophy that speed plus risk plus stubborn refusal to acknowledge consequences equals entertainment. And somewhere along the way, they became very, very good at it. The race morning arrived like a held breath across the entire station. 40,000 spectators. 30 billion watching on broadcast feeds across the galaxy. 14 ships on the launch grid, each one representing either centuries of engineering refinement or, in one specific case, industrial adhesive. Brix Calloway was making last-minute adjustments to the Dustbreaker with a tool that made it sound like it was not entirely happy about being used. Oryn Vasek was standing beside the ship with a cup of something hot, watching the other teams with the calm, unhurried expression of a man who either had no idea what he was walking into or knew exactly what he was walking into and had already decided it did not matter which. I genuinely could not tell which one it was. The launch sequence began. Engines across the grid surged to life. The Nullvex Prime roared with a sound that shook the station walls. The Dustbreaker made a sound that was significantly less impressive, but it did start. The countdown hit 0, and everything that I thought I understood about racing fell apart in the first 4 seconds. Here is what nobody tells you about humans when they race. They do not race the track. They race every other competitor on it simultaneously at all times while also racing the track. It is a completely different philosophy from anything the rest of us practice, and watching it happen in real time felt like seeing a color I had no name for. The first 4 seconds of the Velorum Course saw 14 ships launch from the grid and begin the opening straight towards Sector 1. Zorithess took the immediate lead, because of course she did, because she always does, because her reaction time is medically documented at 0.003 seconds, and the rest of the galaxy has simply accepted this as a fact of life. The Dracovian Nullvex Prime surged into second. The Thon Cartel's sleek twin-engine Miraxis slid into third. The Dustbreaker launched in ninth. I noted this in my broadcast log with the careful professional neutrality of someone who is already writing the human's obituary in his head. Then Sector 3 happened. Sector 3 is a long, sweeping bend, widely regarded as a warm-up corner, the kind of turn where experienced pilots settle their ships and save their engines for the actual difficulty ahead. Every team on that grid knew this. Every team treated it accordingly. Oryn Vasek treated it like an opportunity. He came through Sector 3 on a racing line that our track analysts spent 4 minutes arguing about afterward, because it did not match any documented approach in the championship's history. He cut inside the Miraxis on the entry, held a position that put him within half a span of the barrier wall, and came out of the bend in 5th place, having passed 3 ships through a corner where passing is not supposed to happen. The broadcast booth went silent for a moment. Then my colleague Finrathduel said quietly, "Did he just—" "Yes," I said. "But the wall was—" "Yes," I said. We watched the replay together. The gap between the Dustbreaker and the barrier wall at the apex of that corner was, by our instruments, 0.4 spans. The recommended safe clearance for that section of track is 2.0 spans. Oryn Vasek had used the space that other pilots left empty as a matter of survival, as a passing lane. Brix Calloway's voice came over the team radio, audible on the public broadcast feed, with the cheerful tone of someone watching a pleasant afternoon unfold. "Nice one. 4 cars ahead. Debris field in 6 sectors." Oryn's response was 2 words. "I know." By Sector 9, the gravitational shear zone had thinned the field. 2 ships pulled wide, trying to preserve their hull integrity. The Dustbreaker went through the shear zone on a tighter angle than anyone else dared, using the gravitational pull itself to add speed on exit. It was the kind of move that required either exceptional calculation or exceptional confidence. And in that specific moment, watching it happen, I was not entirely sure there was a difference. The humans were in 3rd place. The Korryn Tunnel arrived in Sector 28, and the broadcast booth became very quiet again, because the Korryn Tunnel is where races end. It is not metaphorical. The tunnel is 1.2 kilometers of carved rock passage, 4.2 spans wide at its narrowest point, and it does not forgive contact. 23 competitors over the championship's history have found this out permanently. Zorithess went through it first, perfectly, because she is Zorithess and perfection is apparently just her default operating condition. The Nullvex Prime went through second, a half second behind, and you could hear the crowd exhale. Then came Oryn Vasek. What he did inside the Korryn Tunnel is something I have now watched 112 times on replay, and I still cannot fully explain it. He entered the tunnel 3rd, but he entered it faster than either of the ships ahead of him. Not recklessly faster, precisely faster. He had clearly identified that the racing line through the tunnel's tightest section left a sliver of space on the inside that was technically, mathematically usable if you were willing to commit to it with absolutely zero hesitation and no margin for error. He committed to it. He came through the Korryn Tunnel in 2nd place. The crowd noise that followed was not the polished appreciation of 40,000 experienced racing spectators. It was something rawer than that. It was the sound of people who had just seen something they were not prepared for. Zorithess heard it over her cockpit feed. She increased her pace by 8% in the final sectors. She is a champion. She responds to threats. But the gap between her and the Dustbreaker, which had been 3.2 seconds at the tunnel exit, was 1.7 seconds at the final sector boundary, and it was shrinking. She held on. She won. She always wins. But the Dustbreaker crossed the line in second place, and the post-race commentary was not about Zorathes. I caught Oryn Vasek in the paddock afterward, standing beside his ship while Brix Calloway was already cheerfully reapplying industrial adhesive to something that had apparently come slightly loose during the race. I asked him the only question that felt worth asking. Were you ever scared? He thought about it for a moment. He took a sip from his cup. He looked at the Dustbreaker with the expression of a man reviewing a conversation that had gone exactly the way he expected. No, he said, but the tunnel was tighter than I thought. He walked away. Brix waved at me from under the ship. I filed my broadcast report that evening, and for the first time in 47 championships, I did not know how to end it. So I wrote what felt true. I wrote that the humans did not come to the Velorum Course to learn it. They came to find out where it could be broken. And in the very first attempt, they found 2 places. Next year, I suspect they will find more. If this story entertained or taught you something, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow and bring you more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.